All right. Going back to Syria. Syria is popping off again. And thank God for that. This is exactly what we wanted to happen. And it's in a way that is so far, I mean, it's just better than anything that could have been expected. For the last couple of years, I've kind of bantered about this, how I thought it'd be a good idea to set up a front, specifically designed to damage Russia and their position in Syria, to create just an inferno to drag them into, to make sure that their position's so insecure, like a real bloodbath. Pretty much what they imagined that we were dealing with, say in Iraq or so. We want them to really be dealing with, and it's looking pretty good because you never really seen anything like this. Say when the U.S. occupied, Middle Eastern countries, where while we're there, there's never this. You can't imagine even like some terror thing. Certainly ISIS did Mosul, but that's after we're gone. Russia is still in Syria and holding the fort down. And I don't know, as much as the online Putin fans, as much as Assad is like their biggest hero ever and the biggest, just a super badass. Like, you'd never see that. Like, I have to figure at this point, Russia is eyeing Assad like, more like Americans thought of as like Hamid Karzai or something. Like, just some useless piece of crap who has a garbage army, and it's costing more to prop this guy up than it's really worth. Now, maybe for Russia, the juice is kind of worth the squeeze with the, if you get warm water poured out of it or whatever their geopolitical, angle is there. Maybe it's worth it, but it sure is going pretty shitty for them, where they lose like Aleppo. Figure that this is a city where, they fought over it for years and years, and then eventually they have a hard-won victory and clear it of all the, the Syrian revolution elements, call them what you will, but they, don't say, oh, Russia cleared ISIS out of Aleppo. ISIS was already not in Aleppo. ISIS had actually been driven out of Aleppo years earlier by the rebels. And this is when nobody was even paying any attention to what ISIS was. If you brought up ISIS, they would not know what you were talking about, say, in the first half of 2014 or so, where it was what ISIS was really involved in was a lot of fighting with rebel groups, because that was the big war for a time. And this is in some ways what paid off for Assad in huge ways, But what we're seeing now is so good. And you see how wrong all the, our famous dissidents and their geopolitical wisdom. You see how wrong with all the Lion of Damascus talk and all this stuff. Now people are very confused. What? How does this guy suck so bad? Now people, they're paying attention to it. They see what a tremendous loss. This is more than we could have hoped for. Like, if you said last month, maybe we can get the rebels, maybe we can get Jolani to retake Aleppo or something, I would have said you're really dreaming, and that, maybe we should pick some more limited goals. And I've never complimented the Syrian Arab army soldier, not, at least not for since say the first part of 2013 or so. When it became very clear that these guys were trash, mind you. I mean, just to go, let's just go back in time a little bit, even when because there was a time. I know I'm kind of all over the place with this, but humor me, bear with me. Maybe we can we'll get somewhere. I'm not promising that, but maybe we can. But anyway, if we go back in time, say 2012, and then starting into 2013, I was very sympathetic to the Assad position, and this is before it became such a meme, mind you. Like, not to say that there weren't people out there. I've known people who are really into Iran and Russia and all this stuff for a long time, like going further back even. Like there was there were like forums like the Fora and Salo forum, and all these people would have Ahmadinejad avatars and stuff, and like Putin is like a national socialist icon or something, and this is the axis of baseness or something, or like even before people would say based or whatever, like this is how a lot of people thought about these guys. But for maybe different reasons, mostly weird conspiracies and anti-Semitism and such. But with Assad, I was I never really got into that. Okay. I never really liked Iran, and I always kind of doubted when people would go on about how badass Russia is, I'd always kind of, I couldn't really prove it at the time, but I pretty much, I really kind of doubted it. I didn't really want to argue with people when they would go on about how bad, I'd say, I'm still not sure they're at the level of the U.S., I mean, just realistically, not even being a huge fan of the U.S. military at the time, because this is when they were kind of at a low point. But I would still say Russia isn't there, okay? But just from my own experience, I'd say, clearly at the time, Assad is fighting all these rebels, and amongst them is like Al Qaeda, especially a particularly dedicated branch, talking about Jabhat al-Nusra, but also there were Al Qaeda operatives in other rebel groups as well, like ash-Sham, which is, I'm just being real. I'm just giving facts. I don't really play a lot of the political games. I don't really feel like I need to. I'm not like a huge voice or something, so I'm more than comfortable just speaking uncomfortable facts where I find them. Just to be, because I happen to be a big fan of reality and just how the way God sets things out. I want to be acquainted with, not just some weird fantasy that fits into my weird ideology or whatever. Like I don't have some like Nazbol thing or something. I don't really have anything like that to deal with. I just deal with facts, and I like to come up with military solutions and think of things in a certain way. But I like to start with facts. That's just me. Nobody else really likes that. But let's, if you're interested at all, and you want to have a conversation, you want to figure this out, that's what we're talking about. So But yeah, a lot of these groups had Al Qaeda guys in their leadership, and this was a fact. Okay, not just even Jabhat al-Nusra or ISIS, both of which were Al Qaeda affiliates. Figure ISIS came from the exact group that I fought against in Iraq, Al Qaeda in Iraq, also known as, when I was there in 2007, they called themselves, and if you ever go in the WikiLeaks stuff and go into that, you'll see that the US, we were calling them ISI as well. And you could look at like after action reports and stuff. Like I've looked at like firefights I was in just to see like what it's, and it'll say sometimes it'll say AQIZ, but sometimes it'll say Islamic State of Iraq or ISI or something like that. Okay, so this is two names of the same group. Al Qaeda in Iraq or Islamic State of Iraq, because then later they made this. Okay, so they send guys, and this is mostly a group of veterans from Iraq who Islamic State of Iraq is sending into Syria, and this is an Al Qaeda affiliate. Sending, and this is going to be the Al Qaeda affiliate in Syria, Jabhat al-Nusra, okay? And this is led by, from the start, Jolani, who is still the man, okay? And there are a lot of other kind of colorful characters at the time. A lot of them have died, including Abu Maria died actually just a few months ago. And killed by ISIS in Syria, and that was an Iraqi who had actually been in the Saddam Fedayeen, and then in the Bremer, briefly in the Bremer's police, then Al Qaeda in Iraq, and then Jabhat al-Nusra. Okay, a lot of the Jabhat al-Nusra, after they're Al Qaeda's guys in Syria, and they're sent there, and this is called the front of support. The idea here is, these guys are going. There's a Syrian revolution going on. The Sunnis are fighting. All the Syrians are fighting. So they figure we need to send guys to help, and this is how that starts. Okay, so they get in with the revolution suddenly, because the Syrian revolution started out pretty secular with the Free Syrian Army, but Al Qaeda is sending guys to help them out, and not to bully them or anyway, just to kind of entry. It's some entryism going on, but to join the Syrian revolution and to help them out against the government, because those are the Sunnis. They're going to help out. And initially, in a way that made them very popular. Okay, and so me coming into it, I'm thinking, well, if Al Qaeda is fighting, if like Assad is, if he's got all these jihadists streaming into his country and all that, and some of them are actually Al Qaeda. Not all of them. I have to address all the dissident right crap, all the conservative crap, because there's so much pollution. So I'm trying to just kind of address some of the stuff and the disinformation that I know a lot of people have picked up along the way or just need clarification with. Okay. So it's not all Al Qaeda. Anyone painting this whole thing with this big brush is just dishonest. And you just didn't really look into what you're dealing with. You just chose to use emotional rhetoric because, Al Qaeda is a certain thing. It's going to, even though most of these people are are big into just shut, this is Al Qaeda. They're all Al Qaeda. They're people who aren't even patriotic to the United States. They're people who never were for the war on terror, who never were all about fighting Al Qaeda after 9/11, who are often 9/11 truthers. But now they're like emotional and they insist that Al Qaeda is bad. But the guys who were framed for 9/11, or the guys who they'd never care, the guys who they've denied the existence of, and they'll say, no, there is no Al-Qaeda. It's just a CIA term that means the base or something. It refers to a CIA database. There's no Al-Qaeda, Now they're going to tell us all these guys are Al-Qaeda and that's bad and that's why we can't support them. It seems a little manipulative, doesn't it? Like almost condescendingly manipulative. So I don't really subscribe to this crap. I find it really irritating. And it's just kind of sad how nobody, if you just do a little bit of research, like I'm not like a counter-terror scholar or something, but like I've become interested in the subject and then I just start reading about the particulars of it. Who are the groups? Who are the people? What are they like? And and go from there. I don't just tune in and someone is screaming about the Lion of Damascus and how it's all Al-Qaeda savage, and then I'm on board. I actually, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but let's do a little better. It's just really sad the amount of garbage, because this is something that you could have learned something from. Just like, say, if you were going into World War II or something, it would have been really intelligent of you to pay attention to like the Spanish Civil War or something, to have like taken notes on that and and actually figure out what actually had happened. Like if you had lived at the time, that would have been really intelligent for you to do, because you could see how developments, turned out. You could have been a little bit ahead of the game in some way, if you needed to be, maybe it didn't matter at all, but if you cared to be, you could have kind of dialed things in. Okay, so that's why I think it's kind of cool to talk about Syria. That's why I'm interested. If you're interested in just how, like, all these people will be all about they're all about like a shit hits the fan scenario, American Civil War, second American Civil War. And then wouldn't this be kind of an interesting, thing to just kind of study up on and get the facts down with? But I've found very few people really do at all. And most conservatives and conservatards and distant fools, it's just really simplistic and just dumb. Al-Qaeda, even though they never care about fighting Al-Qaeda in any other capacity, They're never demanding that we ramp up airstrikes on al-Shabaab or something. But here Al-Qaeda is bad or something. Otherwise, if we intervened in some country because of Al-Qaeda, they'd be the first to be be against it or something. Okay. So, but that's kind of what where I was kind of coming in at with this in Syria when I jump in. So at first I was kind of all yeah, Assad is he's we should back him. I'd say, okay, he's killing his own people, and I looked at, because it was immediately a big thing because he gassed all these people, and then Obama is we're going way back now, but he gasses people, and the gassings in Ghouta, where Obama was talking about how he talked about how that would be a red line if Assad used gas. And then Assad does use gas. Some people say this is it was a conspiracy or a setup, and that Assad never gasses on people. I was looking into it and I concluded that obviously he did. That doesn't really change my opinion, because at the time I was thinking, well, okay, this guy's got all tens of thousands of jihadists streaming into this country. His military is all defecting to the revolution. He's not popular, but I could admit all these facts, but still kind of support him, and I kind of still kind of did. you know, like it doesn't change my mind if someone does like, I don't just switch sides if someone commits like a war crime or something. Like, I don't need to make up conspiracy theories. And I could just say, well, maybe he gassed the neighborhood because, you know, things are getting really bad. And it seemed like maybe it was kind of a dumb thing to do. But either way, I don't see how you could say it's a big conspiracy theory because we never even acted on it. Like, Obama embarrassed himself and ruined his whole legacy because now he's like the huge coward and like idiot who created like a bloodbath for people because he said there were like red lines and stuff, and then he didn't really want to back them up, which is like a huge problem because you know it's you're really messing with to use chemical weapons. It's like, you know, there's a reason why that's bad. It's against international norms and all that, and it should be taken seriously. Even if you say, you know, say what you will, Obama is a piece of shit. But like, if he was actually going to step up and do that, he should have, you know. But he didn't. Okay. So, but why would he do a conspiracy and frame Assad for gassing his own people, but then not even act on it? I could see it making more sense if like that started a war or something, and then you say, well, they did that to start the war, but they didn't start. We like did everything we could to get out of going in, no matter how much he would use gas or do all that. And so it doesn't really make sense that that's a big conspiracy, but that's the loudest voices will insist that you're like you know, a Fed and a shill, and you need to turn off the mains. You just do whatever your TV tells you to or something. And this is even like at this point, I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm a little more distant than I have a stronger distant credentials than you. I've gone stronger against the U.S. government. U.S. government has gone stronger against me, and I'm purely not because I'm not paying my taxes, but because of the criticisms I've leveled. Okay, and protests and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's pretty dumb when these people. Oh, you're Mr. Conformist or something. But they're the free thinker. I'm sorry, but you are a conformist. You are a gullible fool. You only are intelligent enough to kind of maybe, and too late too, well into adulthood, you realize we're being lied to, and then you get lied to by alternative media, and then you just believe it. You know, shame on you for trying to come at me like that, where I've actually never subscribed to any of this crap my whole life, and even as a child, and I don't, you know. Anyway, these people are such clowns. This is just why, like, they'll say the same thing. They'll all say the same thing, and it's all like total lies, and like they like work themselves into chants and stuff like that. Like, you could see like on Twitter where they'll be like, because they'll say like, oh, ISIS is like a Zionist creation of Israel and stuff like that, and they'll be like, you know, oh, hey guys, or I don't know, or like, has ISIS ever attacked Israel? And then it'll be like, nope. Wonder why that is. Nope. And they'll all say the same thing. Oh, one time they did, but they immediately apologized. And they'll all, and you could just look at all the comments, and these aren't like bots. These are real, just people, but they're all the free thinkers who just all say the same lies that aren't even true. So that's just how parrot-like. So it's really disgusting to just see all these people, like just how many there are and just how much pollution this is, and just, especially because so much is foreign driven. So it's not even our own organic idiocy. I don't know. It's you know, I've gone into it, but it's a huge problem that we have just foreign propaganda being pumped into our hillbillies' heads like this. You know, it makes it so it suffocates out any other real potential for a genuine dissident movement, for a sincere dissenter, for a sincere um, any kind of like rebellion or anything, or like any kind of, because I'm not really satisfied with the status quo. It just so happens that I just have to be more disgusted by what's underneath it, which is actually something that, say like a sadist, sadist types will say themselves, because a lot of, say, the Sunnis or whatever who support Assad are like, they'll say like, hey, we actually do want a caliphate, just not one that these guys start, like the ISIS, like I do relate to that. I've seen a sadist type say that, as sadist, and I do kind of get where that's coming from, because I would like an alternative to what we have in the US, just not the alternative that would be provided by our dissident biomass blob of morons, by our hillbilly idiots or something. Like, I'm glad at least that, like, I think Trump can keep these people under his thumb, and because I think Trump maybe has, even though in some ways it's bad how he'll whip these people into a frenzy, but at least I think he has enough disdain for them. Like, he knows he has to command this foolish mob, like he knows what he's doing. I think maybe he can they're better under his thumb than just running wild, even if, whatever, let this cat out of the bag or whatever. Anyway, I digress. So this is why I was kind of initially sympathetic with Assad, because I said, well, I fought the same terrorists, and okay, I could see that it's the same. It's radical Islamic terror, whatever you want to call it. It's Al Qaeda, because I knew that Al Qaeda is a real group, because I've exchanged fire with them myself. I'd seen their black flags with my own eyes. Like, I'd seen them. I have their black masks still, I've been there. I've known these people. I've put these people onto helicopters. I've dealt with these, so if Assad, I'm like, well, this is him fighting the same problem, the same people. But the more I look into it, it just became apparent that Assad is a piece of garbage, and his troops have no esprit, no elan, nothing that really makes warriors admirable. What would make an elite unit? There's really nothing like that. It's just a kind of military I don't like. Just a colorless blob, just a sloppy batch of just brute idiots, and just cowardly cowards, but murderous cowards, or so, but it's just nothing I really like. And then Assad himself, huge liar. I would look into all this, and he would just, it would make more sense to me if he would just be truthful about the situation, but he would just make up like complete lies. Like, he would refer to his war as like the war on terror, which a lot of people didn't really pick up on, because he was trying to ingratiate himself with America and try to say, look, I'm not so different. I'm just doing what you guys were doing in Iraq right next door. Like, I'm dealing with the same. It's just the war on terror. I'm fighting the war on terror, not a civil war at all. Assad could never admit that he fights the Syrians, which is clearly, it doesn't really match up with reality. And just in so many ways, it just seems like, that's what we're dealing with. Just, I could never really respect that. Just people who like lie like that, even for any reason. I know a lot of people in the people excuse any kind of Putin rhetoric or anything. Like, this is just a smart play, but I don't really buy it. I don't think lying is the way to go. I think that's how, like we don't, it's like people think like they're going to lie. They tell all these lies about like Zionists and stuff like that. Like ISIS is Zionist or something. And, like are you really making a point? Like, is this an admirable form of anti-Semitism or something where you just you just lie even more than anything you'll see with like mainstream media, as however many problems there are with that, you're gonna lie even more than that. It's like when they'll talk about like how like Hitler and Joseph Goebbels created the technique of the big lie or something. But it's like what they were talking about wasn't like, they weren't saying like, hey, they weren't saying like, hey, if you make a lie like so big and you repeat it so much, then just the masses of people will believe it. They weren't saying like to do that. They were saying that's what like their enemies do. They were saying, well, that's what you see what's going on in the US, where you have Jewish plutocrats or whatever, where the media is like lying like that. That's what they do. In fact, Joseph Goebbels, his propaganda ministry, his internal messaging it wasn't always truthful, because there were a lot of times where he needed to really manipulate the messaging. But in general, the directives were to just go with the truth, unless you're told otherwise. Just the truth is a fine policy, because we're dealing with liars. So just stick to the truth as close as possible. That's what he was directing people with. But they would manipulate things. I'm not saying he never lied or something, but like he would typically say his technique. He'd say, no, it's smarter to stick to the truth. I believe that too. Like, I think just in general, that makes way more sense. Just because who wants to deal with liars? I happen to think that lying is morally wrong. I believe that. I don't like people who are liars. I have a tough time saying that they are based when they're not even honest, about what they're about. Like, for me, like, basedness or whatever would start with just being honest about, like, you have to, like, or else you're just making crap up. Okay. So I find Assad, all his people, very hard to take seriously. And I would look into all their stuff, and it was just so disgusting and lame and dumb that it's just really repulsive to me. And like, if you just lie to me like that and just make stuff up and it's just really lame. Like, I would actually like, I would like watch like Press TV or stuff like that to try to get their angles. And like, it would be so like, heavy handed with all the stuff. Like even it would just be kind of like a put off. Like they would, like, the news anchor would describe, like, unlike Press TV, they have like the news anchor where they're trying to like mimic like American broadcast news or something, but it's like Iranian. And then but they'll have like Westerners or whatever, or they'll have like an international thing or whatever. But they'll just like referring to like Obama as like a like sodomite Satanist and stuff, and like going on like, and they'll just, and I would kind of think like, I kind of agree with that, but I don't really want you to tell me that. You should just say Obama or something, or President Obama, and then I can make up my like, what I mean? Like, I don't want the news to just tell me that Obama's like a satanic sodomite or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just something really off-putting about that. Like, it's like you're dealing with real propaganda brainwashing, and it's just too heavy-handed. Even when, like, it's like, I believe that. In fact, I still believe that, because Obama is a satanic sodomite. I mean, in fact, he's a total piece of shit. But like, anyway, we'll get back to, okay. So they're just lying about all this stuff, and then it's the same. It's like the same nauseating crap from then till now, where like this stuff doesn't really make a lot of sense. Where like for instance, that the U.S. is backing Al Qaeda, and this, the U.S. is behind all these groups, and we'll start there. Okay, that the U.S. is, and in particular, the U.S. has been backing Al Qaeda for how long, and real uber intellectuals will say this stuff, which is like the line of these people. Well, it's not really true, because Al Qaeda. First off, back then Al Qaeda was a thing in Syria, but like now it's not. It's just totally dishonest now to refer to Al Qaeda in Syria. Unless Al Qaeda is like trying to, but Al Qaeda as an organization isn't really even a thing anymore. For instance, if you know so much about Al Qaeda, well, first off, can you tell me who succeeded Bin Laden? And a lot of people can do that, and they'll say, well, Dr. Z, Zawahiri, okay, who in the U.S. kills him? Okay, so we kill two leaders, but we back Al Qaeda though. It's just how it works, I guess. But then who took over Al Qaeda Central? Right now, who's the leader of Al Qaeda right now? If you're a big, if you know all about this stuff, just get back to me with that. Just tell me who's the leader of Al Qaeda, because apparently he's the leader of what's going on in Syria. Because during the Syrian civil war, actually, Dr. Z was very much hands-on, and when there were disputes between rebels, you would see he would chime in as an authoritative voice, or some rebels would, some Al Qaeda would say, well, I've pledged my loyalty, my bayah or whatever, to Zawahiri, the head of Al Qaeda, and then some of it, well, it's Baghdadi or so, and so this is a rivalry with that, and just to kind of finish the story, Al Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra kind of stuck with the rebellion, the general rebellion. I mean, it's its own unit and organization, but it's embedded within the overall Syrian revolution. ISIS was went the other way. I mean, initially ISIS demanded Jabhat al-Nusra just roll itself into ISIS, and also demanded the entire Syrian revolution, the Free Syrian Army, everything, just basically either disband, or just get absorbed into ISIS and fall under the command of Baghdadi. A lot of people were not willing to do that. Jolani was the first to break off from ISIS, said, no, Jabhat al-Nusra is going to stay its own thing, and we're going to keep with Al Qaeda. So yeah, he actually broke off from, I mean, this is the story, okay, guys? If you're not familiar with it, I mean, if you are, okay, I guess, turn it off. No, I'm just kidding. Stay with me, okay? But so Jolani is going to go with Al Qaeda. He's going to stick with Al Qaeda. This is just the truth of the matter, okay, for however long. This continues for, because he says, well, I'm more loyal, and it's mostly because he didn't want to fall under ISIS. Okay. And so this was the position for a while, and this is where they were all fighting. Okay. So January 3rd, 2014, the rebels actually launched a huge offensive, just general offensive against ISIS to drive them completely out of Syria, which actually almost worked. And what ended up saving ISIS was their operations in Iraq, where they rolled over a whole Iraqi army, in Mosul, and took over Anbar province and beyond and everything else, and like a lot, like almost got to Baghdad, got very far, you know, it is heading towards Erbil and all these other things, you know, but they got so much weapons and money and all that, that then their position in Syria became very much strengthened, and then they rebounded from the rebel attack as well. But they never really got, you know, they never really dominated over the rebellion. Okay. And when Russia shows up and they're bombing out Aleppo, even though they're saying we're bombing ISIS, ISIS was already not there. They never really made it back. Okay. Okay. And what we're seeing now with Aleppo, the rebels have taken ground. They've taken stuff that they actually never held before, because it was always a little messier before. Now they've just cleanly driven, you know, with all of Assad's army just in full retreat, even still just retreating, and they're just backsides just flapping in the breeze, just a cowardly piece of shit army. Okay. If this is the kind of army you admire, you're probably kind of a cowardly piece of shit yourself. Like, that's just kind of what I think. Like, when people like are like, Assad, they're badass, you know. I don't think they're badass. I've actually looked into it. I've actually do research. And I mean, if you did too, and you still think that these guys are like, you know, fight well or something, it's just because you don't know anything about fighting. You can't recognize that. You are just, it's just not in you to be a warrior or something. You just can't see, you know. You're not like a real American Joe. You know, you're not naturally proficient with weapons. You're not comfortable, you know, with war stuff, military stuff. You are lame. Okay, you are a peasant, and so forth. That's just what I think. The people who I want to hang around are not people who think like you or so. And I'm not saying people can't be cured of some of this stuff, because some people just get in with the wrong crowd, and they're just really confused about all this stuff. But some, I'm like, you got to wonder. Okay. All right. Or people can just try to be better or whatever. But some people, I don't buy that they really can. I think they're just naturally kind of crummy. I mean, I find that there's certain people who can just see things. They can just see things as they are, and that makes like, I think you should be able to see, like, I mean, you could tell, like, if an army is good, or if they're just comfortable, or if they're advancing, or if they're retreating, or so, you know. Some people can't see that. It seems like most people, because that's just how dumb a lot of the stuff is. I mean, I don't mean to just keep on ragging on. I don't like to just have just polemic and me complaining and things, but that's just what we're dealing with. The same stuff, the same tired old crap. They're just bringing out the same. They're like, oh, look, Israel backs the rebel. And look, America never really backed the rebels. America never. This takes all this. You see how much money this costs to run, like, to do, like, look at the aid to Ukraine and so forth. It's a lot of money there, and it becomes a big controversy. And it doesn't just get kind of snuck over. The U.S. How's the U.S. been bankrolling the whole Syrian war effort for like over a decade now? And like, we've just been governing Idlib province like in secret or something, or they're just waiting for, you know, they're just in Idlib and they're just waiting for the next payout for the Zionists and Uncle Sam to come around and say, hey guys, we'll give you some money if you take, you know, Aleppo or whatever. You know, even if all the stuff is real, like, let's say there's like a Zog unit or something, and they're like a bunch of savages or something, and then there's like black ops, like Lawrence of Arabia or something, and they're like running these, and they're like, and like, even if they're like, let's say they're like, I don't know, it's like some joint CIA Israeli force or something, and they're just like backing this clandestine terror force or something that attacks America's enemies with all this like terrorist stuff and stuff. I think that's pretty kind of cool in a way, you know, or at least just as an American, you should, you know, like if you accuse, you know, if you say the CIA is backing rebels, just your just default should be that's who you also support, you know. Unless you look into it and you find out it's like some really messed up thing that the government's doing or something. I'm not saying we always do good. We usually don't. It's usually, you know, kind of whatever. But you know, but just for your country, for, you know, you're not, unless you just have a huge problem with authority in general. If the U.S. is backing a certain faction, that should be. You should kind of trust that they know better than you, and they probably do know better than you. I'm not saying that they know, you know, they haven't made significant mistakes. In my opinion, they have, you know, but this doesn't. You can't figure it out just by going off of some cheap propaganda lies that are way more simplistic than what the situation really is. Okay. And we can see that these people only have so much. That's why they're just leaning back on the same stuff, you know. The moderate rebels. These are the moderate rebels. It's like, just shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up about moderate rebels. When they would refer to moderate rebel, like if the media 10 years ago, maybe that was like a term or something that was used sometimes. It's because they're saying, well, yeah, we know that there's radical jihadist factions in this rebellion, but there's also rebels who, like, we have a little more hope for just as like a secular, you know, and these are the more moderate rebels. You say, that makes no sense. How could a rebel be moderate? You know, yeah, it doesn't really make that much sense, but it's not that insane or mind-boggling or something either. It's just, they're just saying these guys have they're a little bit more moderate. I mean, I don't think that's hard to figure out that relatively, let's say, the Northern Storm Brigade is more moderate than ISIS, or that the Syrian Revolutionary Front is more moderate than Jabhat al-Nusra, or even ash-Sham, or even something like Islamic Front, or Jaish al-Islam and stuff like that, and whatever else, like, you know. Yeah, because they were actually acknowledging, when they would say that, they were actually being way more on, because they're acknowledging that there are radical rebels. But, like, no matter what, like, all it would just be some idiot, like, hardcore Assad, and they're just like, it would be like ISIS, and they're like drowning people or something on video, or they're like blowing people's heads up with like det cord and stuff, and they're like, these are the moderate rebels I was talking about. Like, no, like, you fucking idiot. Like, those are the radical rebels. Like, those are like the real terrorists. Or like, when someone says moderate rebel, they've created a distinctive, a differentiator for, like, that's why they would say that. Otherwise they would just say rebels. They're not just saying the rebels in general are really moderate. Like, have you ever, like, would that make any sense? Or like if like the American Civil War or something, like, you wouldn't just say like, we're fighting moderate rebels. Like, just in general, we know these guys are kind of moderate. They're not that like different than us or something. Like, they're just moderate. You know, they're saying the reason they would say moderate rebels is because they're rebels who they didn't consider moderate, who are relatively immoderate. That's not that stupid. So now you don't even hear politicians or media or something say that. But because the dissidents are so tired and so lame, you just hear all the stuff again now, like Syrian girl and stuff, or like Jackson Hinkle, and like he's just recycling the same stuff. And it's just so annoying, like how much of this stuff there is. Where it's just like, or like it's like always some like Iranian living in like London town or something, and they're like, and it's like ISIS is like chopping people's heads off and stuff, and they're like, wow, so these are the moderate rebels. I'm like, no, like the moderate rebels are like different. They're like different guys. Bull crap, they're all, I'm sorry to tell you, they're different guys. Okay? You can look at a map, you could find these units out. They're mostly Syrian. They're all foreigners. Look, there's a lot of foreigners who've come in and they're like, but it's kind of whatever, isn't it? Like, there are a lot of foreigners, but the foreigners are like, they're not the majority of the rebellion by any means. They're like, sorry, but they're like, I mean, in Islam, it's like a thing that there's like foreign fighters and stuff, and like, I don't see why people are like kind of crying about that. Like, even like, in Iraq, they would estimate that a lot of those guys were foreign fighters, and we would come across foreign fighters. We'd come across Syrians with like red hair, and definitely all the locals would insist these guys were like foreign. They would say like all the people fighting the Americans are foreign. They're not locals; they're foreign. Even though we didn't really take that serious because it's whatever. But it wasn't like a huge like if these guys are so if the rebellion's so popular in Iraq, why do they need all these foreign fighters? It's because it's like really obvious because Muslims and jihads just come to each other's aid and like stuff like that. Like, so there'd be like Chechens and stuff like that in Iraq. And we were kind of fascinated by this. It was kind of a fascinating thing, that there would be like Chechens and it's not just the Iraqis, that there's actually a good deal of foreign fighters. Most of them were Iraqis, okay? Even though I've seen some of our intel estimates in some areas would say like, oh, in this area, 70% of the insurgents are foreigners, mostly from Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. Like, we would get like intel, but I didn't necessarily believe it, just because to me, like, most of the insurgents were clearly Iraqi. And like, if it would be like, it would be kind of a thing, when you'd find someone who's not, it's kind of interesting, so, but it wasn't like, something to like cry about or something. It's actually kind of interesting because it's a romantic kind of concept, the foreign fighter. Like, most of these like neo-Nazis and stuff will like, they'll be all about like foreigners in the SS and stuff like that. Like, it's like a really popular topic because it's really fascinating. But then with Syria, it's like they don't get it or something, or like that's, it's just completely dishonest. Oh, it's all foreigners or something, It's not all foreigners. It's mostly Syrians. And especially with the general rebellion, it's mostly Syrians. Even in Jabal al-Nusra, is say, you say it began with kind of Iraqis and then it's Syrians. Okay. And something I kind of meant to touch up on with that is that when I looked into it, it became, like, because initially, I was saying, well, these guys, this is Al-Qaeda, so like, why, that's an enemy who I fought, so why would I be against, say, this guy Assad, because he's fighting like the same kind of thing, And when we were doing it, it wasn't the most popular thing either. Like, when you were like a U.S. Marine fighting Al-Qaeda at the time, you were kind of like the bad guy internationally, which was kind of cool in a way, because who gives a rip if the whole world thinks you're evil or something, It was kind of cool, like, you're like the bad guy or something, you took over a country and you're like oppressively ruling it, occupying it, or whatever. We had our own reasons for that. Anyway, but yeah, I was kind of just thinking about it more and looking in it, and you know, it's real. There's lessons to be learned here because the people in Syria didn't necessarily weren't immediately say receptive to the ideas of say Jabhat al-Nusra, but what was really clear is these guys could fight. They had SV bids, so they had the suicide trucks, which can just, I mean, they're going off like mini nukes or something, and they're like an equivalent to like, you know, I mean, they're not equivalent, but it's like it's really heavy firepower and very hard to stop, and so you can lead assaults with these armored trucks, and they're just going to explode and blow holes in the enemy's fortifications or whatever, and then you could just stream all these jihadists in, and so this is what made them popular, okay, and it's the fact that they could fight so well, and also that the U.S. with Obama had really betrayed them, because he said, hey, if you know, the U.S. will step in if Assad crosses these red lines, because, you know, that's totally unacceptable. Then he backs off. Obama really wanted nothing to do with fighting Assad. Obama wanted to have an Iranian nuclear deal. Okay, and this has all been revealed, and this is on record stuff. So, you know, like Ben Rhodes did an interview with the New York Times, and he detailed a lot of the stuff. And he also spoke some of the stuff off the record too, like why the U.S. would help Hezbollah and stuff like that, why the Obama administration was securing Hezbollah's supply lines and stuff. He answered to this stuff, like, and he answered to why the Obama administration was lying to create narratives that were pro-Iran, saying that Rouhani was moderate and a reformer and things like that, so they could get this nuke deal. And they were doing very deceptive messaging on the American people. Ben Rhodes, Obama's guy, admitted this, all this stuff. So a lot of this is out there, but, you know, people don't want actual facts. They don't want to research and read up on things. They want, you know, just what their own conclusions are and to reinforce those things. And they want a cartoon picture, and they're not trying to get the truth of anything or details into anything. They already, okay. So yeah, they just want to prove it. Sorry, I just accidentally hit this button and whatever. Okay, so we're back. Sorry, you don't even know that. I hit the button and so all right, that was a cut, but whatever, we're back. Okay, what was I saying? I don't know. Sorry, I just hit this button and I accidentally stopped the recording, but now we're back. Okay, I'm hoping that we're all good. Anyway, like, so Obama was not even really for any of the rebellion really at any point. And even when they would like arm rebels and things, and this is like that Arias Rosinos guy early, and this is in like 2013. He was with Syrian Revolutionary Front, and he's doing a documentary for Vice, and they were saying the CIA, the Americans, yeah, they are willing to pay. You know, they want to recruit and arm and train rebels, you know, and to have these rebel units, but only to fight ISIS and not Assad. And this is even when most people hadn't heard of ISIS, okay? So it wasn't to arm, it was to get into the rebellion, to enter into it, to fight off the radical elements, and specifically to not fight with Assad, which the U.S. never really did. Obama never did, and Trump only did a little bit. But the idea that like the U.S. raised up all these like rebel units and is backing all these rebels is, it doesn't really make it doesn't hold up to any scrutiny, because you could just like compare to say Ukraine and things like that, compare to other proxies we've had and wars we've had, or, puppet armies we've raised up and things. This can't all be done just totally secret with no money being, you can say, well, all the money, the Pentagon's losing all this money and we don't, yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit, but like, I don't know. I don't buy it. I don't see how that's just not, I don't know. I don't find that realistic. Like that, because this takes so much stuff. You'd need all these Lawrence of Arabia type guys on the ground, and you could look up other stuff. Like there's other special operations that were over, where you could see the people who were involved. The truth comes out after a while. We could see actually a lot of the what we were doing in Syria. If you look into it, you could find out a lot about it. But it's just a mysterious thing, or people just write off as like, well, the U.S. has raised up this force or something, and it's dishonest from the other side, from as well, like to say like Hamas is just Iranian or something, and that's not really the case. And I mean, I'd kind of maybe thought that maybe a few years ago, I'd probably kind of thought that's primarily an Iranian force, but then you could see how that's not really true. And I mean, that's not how I viewed things with the Israel war, this recent one with Gaza and everything. As I've said, I think Iran wouldn't have wanted Hamas to act in the way that they did, and Hamas probably did purposely provoke a wider response. And I think they're trying to get Iran to fight Israel, but they don't want to do it. I think they're trying to bait them in, and Iran never wanted them to do it. So, but they're the big heroes or something to all these people. You'll see all this weird stuff, and it'll be like, you see like Twitter accounts or something, and it's like Christian, and it's like conservative, patriot, American patriot, Christian. And then they're like, oh, wow. And then it's like, wow, I like the Shiites way more than the Sunnis, and the Shiites are so cool, and the Sunnis are like, they just serve Israel, and they don't, but the Shiites are like bravely fighting Israel. Is this true though? First off, it's kind of dumb to like have your like favorite Muslims or something. I know like maybe I'm guilty of this in some ways too. But I understand that that's kind of pretty crass, especially if you're like a Christian, or you're not like, it's not really appropriate. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense either when you see like Iran isn't acting bravely. They're not attacking Israel. They're not, like, as much as they'll be like, how come ISIS, how come Al-Qaeda never attacks Israel or something? Well, it's like, well, how about like when they've released statements saying that they're attacking America because America backs Israel and all that, like, or like whatever, like that's kind of dishonest thing to say, especially when Iran never goes out of their way to attack Israel, and then like Iraqis now are like mobilizing to fight in Syria. They never did like that, and Hezbollah was never so aggressive against Israel. These Iraqi militiamen, Hashd al-Shabi was never this aggressive against Israel. But this could be explained away or something. It really shows how much people will just gobble down these disgusting propaganda narratives and just stupid crap without really any second thought, or, as long as it goes with what they already think. Okay, I digress again, I think. Yeah, anyway, but yeah, Jabhat al-Nusra became popular because they could fight really well because of what they were doing, whereas ISIS was a lot more heavy-handed and things like that. But when you have these guys, they're more radical, but they could actually fight. There's some principles to be learned here. And we could see, too, the same thing with Ukraine. And I noted that at the time when they were doing their revolution, that it was like right sector and things like that, like Pravi sector and like stuff like that. And like that's why Azov and stuff become really popular over time. they're a little more radical. They're more motivated. They have more elan. They have more esprit, and they could fight, and that makes them popular, even though their ideas might not be the most palatable to the locals. Like most Arabs in the Middle East, like if you go, they're not like just like hardcore like Islamists or something. Like most of them like just smoke cigarettes all the time and just like sit around and like they're not really interested in like a lot of the stuff. But then maybe, you know, push comes to shove and they get into it, or they want to be in an elite unit or something. But it's kind of I don't know. People have kind of strange picture. Like Iraqis are just as lazy as most Americans. You know, they're not like super idealistic and like just rearing to go into a fight or something. You know, I mean, like maybe like a small minority is, but most people around the world are just normal, and they're not like as go-getter as like it'd be really admirable, you know, and it is admirable to a large extent how you know, some of the things like the tenaciousness of some of these, like for instance the Syrians right now. It's pretty admirable that they still didn't lay it down with this fight. They're still fighting, and now they're reaping huge victories. They've reconstituted themselves. They have with ingenuity and their tactics and things in ways that Assad, his army, did not do. They have Russian advisors teaching them the worst tactics in the world. So we see where they could have reconstituted just as easily, but you see they're kind of crummy. You know, the rebels have bounced back. It's really funny now because there's no way that the Assadists, the Assadists, and the Shiites, the Shiites will take it back as easy, and they're gonna have to pay with so much blood, and they're gonna have to drag Russians by the nose to try to take if they could even pull it off. Like, we don't know how things are going to go down, but it's going to be a fight now. And you know, these people are getting dragged kicking and screaming into the inferno. And it's funny as hell. Like, that's what you get, you know? You didn't, and I'd said it however long ago. We're just going over all the old propaganda narratives and such. But another one is the Khan Sheikhoun, once again, another chemical attack, sarin, false flag, supposedly. If you ask maybe the alt-right at the time, you know, which is a lot better than the distant right, but still a lot of the same lame ideas had infiltrated. But all these people and conservatives and everybody else would say, and even Christians and such, they say, oh, this is clearly a false flag. Why would Assad do, you know, Assad had just won the war. Pretty convenient that right after he wins the war, there's a chemical attack, you know. What? Where, when did he even win the war? Now we can see that it's a big lie. Now's the time to really reevaluate how much these people. We could always reevaluate just based on battlefield conditions how much people are lying. Because if he'd already won the war, how are these rebel strongholds like doing all this stuff? Like, they're not like he didn't take over Idlib, a whole province ruled by Al-Qaeda. Okay, even just I know we're jumping back and forth a lot with this, but humor me, bear with me. I think you're taking it all in. But anyway, we talked about how Jabhat al-Nusra went with Al-Qaeda. All right, years go on. Long story short, they drop Al-Qaeda. And even before they did that, they'd said, like, we're not doing international terrorism. Like, our ops are for Syria. You know, we're not trying to attack the United States. Okay. And interestingly, and here's another little aside, the US with Obama first intervened in Syria to attack Jabhat al-Nusra with like and there however many Tomahawk missiles and such. Not very effective attack, but this is what got the US foot in the door in Syria. How many people remember this? But Obama had claimed he was attacking the Khorasan group, which was like this elite inner terrorist Al-Qaeda group. There were but in Jabhat al-Nusra, it was imminently plotting attacks against the United States, and that's the Obama had already intervened in Iraq against ISIS because, ostensibly because he was because ISIS was gonna take that mountain with all the Yazidis on it, and he was gonna rescue the Yazidis. Okay, according to General Martin Dempsey, I don't believe Obama. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just look into the facts and then I just note things down. But Dempsey said, no, it's Erbil was the trigger because ISIS was approaching Erbil, which at the time was overestimated how much oil was here. So I'm not a big war for oil person or something, but this is when ISIS threatened Erbil, where there's a lot of international energy interests, including from Russia, actually. And that's why the U.S. intervened with ISIS, and that's what started the air campaign with ISIS. Then ISIS did Jihadi John's cutting American heads off. That turned into a bigger campaign. Okay. But just to note these, like, it was kind of a false pretense Obama gave on that. I think Dempsey is speaking the truth. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but, you know, I'm just saying this is kind of how it went. But in Syria, Obama says we need to take down the Khorasan group. And does anyone remember this? I talked to people and they have no idea what I'm talking about. But this actually did happen. And I'm sure if you... Cause, I mean, I didn't... I tracked all this real closely at the time, and I was living in Hawaii, and I just kind of followed along, okay, and so I didn't like read a book on this or something. Like people, like I get asked this a lot. I don't really have that many that much to offer for like what to read up on this, you know. But this is just events I remember. And this is how it went, and these are facts, and I'm sure if you look it up, like, just type in, like, Khorasan group and stuff like that, and, like, this is how the U.S. intervened in Syria initially, is they get the Khorasan group, and which, in my opinion, did not exist, and I think it's completely made up. It's likely that there were figures from Khorasan, talking about Afghanistan, that Al-Qaeda had sent, because there were some AQC guys around. And like I said, not just in Jabhat al-Nusra, like I'll admit, at the time there was more Al-Qaeda. There were even Al-Qaeda operatives. There were Al-Qaeda in the leadership of other rebel groups too. That's just the fact. They made it there. And some of them were sent from there. But the Khorasan group thing is kind of like a made-up thing. Not a conspiracy theorist, but this is one time where I don't think you need to believe the government. I think they're making stuff up. Whether you think this is justified or not or whatever is on you. But it's kind of interesting. Anyway, so it is just, but it's a lot different than what people say or think, where it's just the U.S. tried as hard as we could to take down Assad, but couldn't do it because he's such a badass. That's not even the case. We were bombing all these other people. Anyway, somewhat after that, Jabhat al-Nusra changed their name to it was like Jaish al-Fatah ash-Sham or something. JFS, okay. And then it became HTS, like it is now. But around JFS time, they broke off with Al-Qaeda, and they said, we're no longer affiliated. They'd already renounced international terrorism, but now we're not an Al-Qaeda affiliate at all. We're just the Syrian thing. We renounce maybe for a little bit that was to downplay things, but I think as years have gone on, that's like a real thing. Like, I don't think AQC has any real role in the politics of the Syrian rebels anymore. That's just the fact. If you keep referring to Al-Qaeda, like I said, if you're gonna just keep on saying no, they're all Al-Qaeda, just tell me who the current leader of Al-Qaeda is, right now, without looking it up. Just let me know. We'll see how many Al-Qaeda experts know who's the current leader of Al-Qaeda, of AQC, who took over after Dr. Z, who was important in Syria, who never was in Syria, but his words were important. Okay. And something else that should be pointed out is that actually Assad has given more aid to has actually done quite a lot to ramp up Salafi jihadism. I actually even used to have English language copy of Milestones by Qutb that was printed in Damascus, and but I gifted this a couple years back to Thomas, but it's kind of cool. But it shows this was going, like, they're printing out all this. Supposedly this, they're printing out all this Islamist literature in Damascus. Okay, I thought that was it's just kind of neat, but but even beyond just printing books, but when I was in Iraq, it was a big thing. Like, there were whole battalions from my regiment who would rotate to Al-Qaim, which is on the Syrian border. And so I'd hear a lot. Like, I didn't really go that far. My unit would go more to like the Fallujah area in Anbar, kind of between like Ramadi and Baghdad. Fallujah, Karma, Sakhawiya, Zaidan, things like that. So I'd never been to Al-Qaim. I've never been to the Syrian border, but I knew a lot of people who did, because a lot of my friends would go when everyone's back in California. We'd hang out. The other battalions of my regiment, two of them would spend a lot of time there, because they would go to Husayba and Al-Qaim, and they'd tell me all about what it's like over there. And everyone knew the terrorists were streaming in from Syria, and it's pretty well known Syria was allowing it. Syria was, and I've come across Syrians in Iraq as well, just not on the border. I wasn't on the Syrian border, but I mean, they'd even get into firefights and things where they're actually firing into Syria, where like they tell me plenty of them had fired into Syria, had launched mortars into Syria, had and they're like they're getting in these fights where they're exchanging fire into Syria. Like, I heard a lot of weird stories like that at the time of the Iraq War, and it was just pretty well known. Everyone knew. And you say, well, maybe it's just total, and okay, maybe, but probably not. Because even people who fought Assad since would say, no, he would facilitate. The regime would facilitate. You'd go to Syria. Probably they were hoping a lot of these elements would not come back. They could clear out a lot of these Islamists, and they won't come back. And then they could say, well, we're look at all this Islamist trouble over there, and Assad is keeping things good here, and we don't want to end up like that with all these savage terrorists and things, you know. So this is like it was, I think, somewhat clearly a program of the Syrian Mukhabarat, their secret services, to get these guys. And this is the position of the U.S. government as well. And the military in general thought so too at the time, that Syria is an enabler of terrorism. Sometimes there would be like rumors that Syria would get engaged more heavily, just like there were rumors that we would go to Iran or something at the time. But, you know, it wasn't just totally like bogus warmongering stuff to create hostilities with Syria. If we really wanted to fight Syria, we would have just done it. Because Assad his army isn't that great, and we would just cream this fool. And who knows? It never really goes well for us when you do, like, probably we wouldn't really be welcomed as a liberator as usual, even though everyone hates him and stuff. Like, if we took him out and showed up, they probably would be putting IEDs in the road or something, because these people are kind of jerks in a way, but just same as everybody else in the world. Like, you see how the Shiites in Iraq behave towards us. You know, they weren't so grateful for being liberated by this dictator, even though they'd call for us to intervene and blame us for how he's killing them and stuff. Then when we take them out, then they're just attacking us immediately, the Shiites. So don't get me started on trying to say like Shiites are some great thing. I don't think really any like Islamism is that great. I admire maybe more, you know, just to play my favorite Muslim, I do kind of admire the Sunni Salafi jihadist thing more. I don't really like their views on religion or anything. I don't really like Islam. I obviously don't subscribe to that in general. Like, I don't subscribe to it at all. But I would not like to see, like, if I think we should support the Syrian revolution. I think that includes HTS. I don't think that should be considered a terrorist group. I don't think they have anything to do with Al-Qaeda. I don't see a huge issue with that. But, there is, maybe they would make theocratic rule if they took over. I wouldn't like to see that. I would, where their women have to cover their hair or something or whatever. I wouldn't like to see that. But, I mean, if they fight and win, then that's their right to rule. You know, so that's how I see it. But if they're going to be our friends, even better. Because why keep this thing going? Like, traditionally, the U.S. has been friends with Sunnis and stuff, and that's why we get accused of, like, we're backing all the Sunnis and the Sunnis are like Zionists or something. And it's not because we do, because we don't. And a lot of that relationship has been kind of damaged by bin Laden. Like, that's why it wouldn't be acceptable for, like, a politician to, and that's why no one was really brave enough to, no one wants to say, like, let's take Jabhat al-Nusra off the terror list or something. Well, it might be bad politically, because you know that people are just going to hammer you with, like, emotional rhetoric about how evil you are for doing that or something. When it might be just a sober-minded, just good call, you know. That but yeah, I don't see HTS as a terror group. I think it's fine, especially with Ukraine. I think we're somewhat obligated to support in some ways in Syria. We need to be hitting Assad because this can relieve pressure on Ukraine. So we can't really be that picky. If HTS is going to hit hard against Assad, well, that's just compassion to the people of Ukraine to just say, you know, whatever qualms you might have about jihadism or something, just hold your nose. I mean, as long as these people aren't calling for attacks on the US or something, obviously, like, it'd be a non-starter if, like, this was still, like, an Al-Qaeda affiliate who was, like, vocally, like, agitating against the US. That's not really the case. Just look into it. Just look into their policies and things, and actually, like, they seem like they're trying to get along in the modern world. They're trying to carve out, like, they're not completely against everything or unresponsive, and they're trying to message in a way to put that out there. And you can say, well, they're just tricking you because they want to, then they're really kind of I mean, that's something else. Then these people are really something else. They're so idealistic and so hardcore dedicated. I don't really buy it. I think we could come up with a pretty square deal where everyone comes away fairly happy. As long as we're not dealing with something like ISIS, where they're totally so truculent, and they're just not going to get along with anyone, and they're just going to call for attacks in the US and in the West, and they're not going to make peace with anyone because they think that, like, their religion, that, I mean, there's something to admire about how hardcore they are, but obviously we just can't. They're just too psychotic. Like, if they show up again, it's bad news. So it's bad news for the revolution. I think ISIS, needs to be. If Islamic State is ambushing Shiite pilgrims in Afghanistan or fighting the Taliban or whatever, I don't think that's really the U.S. concern, or really a big concern, or really a moral issue I care about. But if it'll be something I'd like to, we need to nip in the bud if they try to, because what they're going to start attacking the rebel groups from the back, which is what they were doing before. When ISIS first came on people's radar, that's what they were kind of noted for. And the Syrian rebels were saying right off the bat, pretty much, that Assad is backing ISIS. Some of that could be a conspiracy of that kind of wishful thinking or so, or you could see the advantage. For instance, that would be an advantage if Assad's fighting the rebels, ISIS is in the rear of the rebels, if Assad is reaching out to help ISIS fight the rebels, which is what they were doing while they're fighting Assad. Did that really happen? To some extent, yes, probably. To a huge extent, maybe not. Probably most ISIS people are firm believers in everything they do. But there are some compromised individuals. There was like a Delta Force raid a couple years back, and we got a high-ranking ISIS guy. And one of the interesting things why they wanted to capture this guy was because he had ties to the Assad. He was also an Assad. He was also like an Assad guy, and definitely a go-between between Assad and ISIS. However, how much this? That you could say there are some pragmatic considerations. Maybe they're going to hold their nose themselves for some of the stuff. Probably a little bit they do, but a lot they probably don't, because most of these people in ISIS are they're maniac, but they're kind of true believer types. I think that made them attractive for a while because they're incorruptible in a way, but then they're just so psychotic that makes them unpopular. Okay. So, but I think it's kind of like that. So I think that maybe is overplayed. I think there is some of that with ISIS, that Assad did give some assistance to ISIS, which they probably accepted. It might be overplayed just because I think it's the same case as, like, people see that the U.S. working with Sunnis could be an advantage to us. So they accuse us of doing it, even though we're not. But they see the advantage, or they see their own weakness, and their vulnerabilities and what advantage they could get that we could get. So they accuse us of doing it, even though we're not as crafty as they're really thinking. I think that's kind of what's going on with that. But Assad did, as much as people talk about blowback or something, usually when they're trying to accuse us of like starting the Taliban or something, they'll talk about blowback or something. But Assad, his whole war is definitely one of blowback, because he was, and actually so was Iran, helping Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Okay, and then a lot of these guys came to fight, including Jolani, who came from Syria. He fought as a foot soldier against the U.S. and is now leading the charge against Assad. And you call that blowback. Okay? But more interesting maybe is that at the beginning of the Syrian civil war, there was a big amnesty where Assad released all these Salafi jihadist like ideologues and leaders and they're like the leadership of like the Salafi jihadist movement, and they're like, they're under arrest because they're Islamists who want the fall of the Assad regime. They don't believe in man-made law or whatever. They don't believe in secular rule. They only believe in, Sharia or whatever. And so they're under arrest. They're in prison. They're enemies of the regime. But he lets them out. He lets these guys out at the beginning of the revolution. Under kind of the guise of like, sometimes this happens in revolutionary situations. You do an amnesty, maybe as a pressure release valve or something, ostensibly, of course. But here's the thing. It seems you could say, well, maybe not, but he did release all these guys, and they became the leadership of all the Islamists, the Salafi jihadist groups fighting against him. So he let all these guys out, and then it's pretty clear. Okay, he lets these guys out because he wanted what was initially a secular rebellion to be colored with Islamism, with Salafism, with jihad. He knew if he lets these guys out, they're going to create a big jihad and go nuts with terrorism. And then he could say, see who I'm really fighting on the international level, on the local level. But, you say, well, that's kind of clever. Wow, that worked out for him. It did work out for him because we were fooled by it. Even our politicians, our leaders, the Obama regime. Obama, of course, wanted to be kind of fooled by it, but you could see all the rhetoric. You could see with conservatives, all this stuff. You could see how it did help him get away. Pretty soon, the U.S. was in Syria bombing Assad's enemies, not fighting Assad, but fighting his enemies, which is what happened. You could be a conspiracy theorist and say, no, the whole rebellion was run by the U.S. and these are that's not, we didn't really put forth the effort or the money or that just didn't happen. It's not even realistic now that we've been doing it now for like over a decade now. And just no one's really figured out that we've been governing Idlib province and all that. And we've been preparing this whole attack. If we could do all that's admirable in its own way. It's very impressive. And it's going to be more impressive anyway because they've outfought Assad, and they took over all of Aleppo. They didn't even have air cover. The Assadists have Russia on their side. That's pretty impressive. Even if you say, well, it's a Zionist backed, it's still pretty impressive. Then they're superior. They fight better. But they're Zionist and backed by America and Turkish. They're better than you, though. They outfought you. You ran away. You didn't fight for a huge major city. And they're like, oh, no, it's a death trap for the terrorists. That's what sadists will say. That's real nice to just let terrorists take over your city, and then you're just going to bomb it into a husk again, bomb it to smithereens with all the people in it. create all these refugees to send to Europe. Real nice. The yeah, I mean, like, just imagine that though. Like, that's not a really cool government. If I was like one of Assad's soldiers and like I'm like fighting against these like jihad unit, and like this isn't like a abstract or obscure thing. It was like a lot of the big like people who Zoran Alouche and Hassan Aboud. So the leader of ash-Sham and the leader of Jaish al-Islam were, and plenty of other guys too, were in this amnesty. These were Salafi jihadist leaders who were released, and they immediately started turning Free Syrian Army rebel brigades into much more, and you could see like how the logos changed and the names changed and stuff. Like, they're turning it into a much more Islamist style revolution. Their side became more Islamized and more terroristic, and also way more aggressive in some ways, but and a little more evil, but a little more truculent. But but how you know, so these guys were like killing all his soldiers and like killing all these people and like massacring like they're massacring all the minorities. Assad, the protector of minorities. The big line you always hear. That's real nice though, isn't it? Like, what a guy. What a cool guy. That's the kind of strategies that are employed. It just really, and Arabs, you talk to Arabs from the region and things like that, and they'll tell you like they'll be like, you're naive, you're American, you're Anglo, you're white, you're naive. Your people are very naive. We Arabs are very crafty. We come up with schemes, and everything's a conspiracy. That's that's what they'll say. And it's big, like, even the amount of conspiracies and things is pretty crazy. Like the Iraqi soldiers, even, who like we armed, trained, and we're like sending these guys into battle. We've got our air support covering them, and they're fighting ISIS, and they're saying, well, America is backing ISIS. Like that's what they're thinking. And so people say this is. And then they'll say, that's crazy that you accuse Assad of the stuff, that he both fights ISIS and backs ISIS? Huh? What? But they accuse us of that all the time. They accuse us of the same thing. The reason they accuse us is, and they know that is something that they would do. And again, all the conspiracy theories, so many of them are just, it's just, that's what people are saying with a lot of conspiracies is that's what I would do if I was in that position. I would do that, They see the advantage in it. They see how clever, or they see what they're saying is that's like all these like QAnon people, like you don't think they would try adrenochrome if they could? Like, a lot of these people will do like DMT and stuff, and they'll probably wish they get adrenochrome. Like, if they were running the government, that's what they would be doing, because they saw some dumb Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas or something, and then they're like, oh man, a good way to harvest it would be to like scare children you've kidnapped or something, and then you can get the adrenochrome, then get high on it. They're thinking that's what they would do. A lot of the Alex Jones listener, a lot of the QAnon, that's what they would do. That's what they know, that they're the exact people who would be getting high on adrenochrome if they could get, even though it's not even a real thing. But they saw it in the movie and they want it. Whatever. All right. But I digress. But yeah, there's so many goofy lies. There's gonna be a lot to talk about with Syria, though. I hope I don't know. I'm pretty ecstatic. I'm euphoric about the situation. because it means, I don't know, that it's just I mean, we want the war to expand. I've been saying this for a while. We want that. War is good. You know, you might have some, like, I see a lot of our enemies think it's bad, or they're trying to poison our people into thinking war is bad. Like Scott Ritter, child predator, pro-Russia guy, RFK friend. But our Russia propagandist, Assadist propagandist, he says, oh, no war, no war. The people, Trump needs to do no war. He promised no war. The American people demanded no war. Look, it's not acceptable for the American people to demand no war, even if that was the case. Obviously, most people didn't vote for Trump. Most people didn't vote for Trump because there's some Russia fanboy or something. That's absurd, or because of no war or something. But that wouldn't be acceptable for the American people to say that. If we need to go to war, we go to war. War isn't a bad thing, especially from our point of view. Where we can actually, no one can really beat us. Like, war, what's the problem with war? Like, let's say we just decide to go to town and just use all our weapons and just be as ruthless as possible with them. Who can really stop us? So what's this anti-war sentiment about? It's lame anyway. War only makes people better. We only got on the moon because we have like a Cold War, because we have competition, because Mortal Kombat makes people better themselves in ways where they don't, where they just live in peace and degenerate and just sit on their asses just doing whatever. Just, we see what peace gets us. American people are not people. You can say, well, America's always at war. No. No. America's at a peace mindset at all times, no matter what. Because there's a lot of problems with this, but we don't really have martial values. It's been so eroded. A lot of it has been eroded since like the 60s because of Russian propaganda. The same stuff that we're always dealing with. But it's good now. We get to see, we want Russia to be just sucking on IEDs. We want to see Russian soldiers deal with insurgency, because they can't really do it. You see how they do, you see how they try to do it, and they get rolled up in ways that could never even happen, like to America, because Russians aren't really at a level that's higher. Like, I don't think Russian fighters are superior to Arabs and things. Like, look at look at how well these guys really fight. Like, they actually fight really good. And I'm not there. There's a lot of talk that like Ukraine might be aiding. There could be like some like Ukrainian Lawrence of Arabia aiding the Syrians or something with that would be cool. I think that would be smart. Maybe that's going on. I think that would be cool, but I haven't really seen the evidence for it. And I think that Syrians they definitely have some of them are very capable. They have people who are very, very clever with this stuff. And I think even their foot soldiers are not qualitatively inferior to the Russian soldiers. Like, when people are like, you Americans are only good at fighting these goat herders or whatever. What are these like barefoot peasant goat herder? You're real good at fighting like but it's like, you mean like you? Like, Russia's a joke, man. Like, Saddam had more paved roads. He paved more roads than you did, like, in your stupid country. Like, You're not like Iraqis, even in Desert Storm, actually, I think performed, even though they got creamed. In some ways, you could see how they keep bringing logistics up, and they didn't just snap. Like, actually, they pretty impressive in some ways. I'd put them on the level. Like, I'm like, okay, I don't see Russia really doing any better than that, frankly. And then you see, look at this, look at stuff like this. Like, it's like you can't really outfight these people. Like, okay, you rip on us for fighting goat herders or whatever, but like there isn't an enemy that exists that's like on our level. So everyone is like, we're always picking on someone. Okay, so don't give me that. But the numbers are on the other side always, though. That's what Russia has. Just read pretty much any German war memoir of World War II, and they'll tell you the Russian strength is called their numbers, and they'll all say it's only their numbers that'll get us. And they would always say this. In the end, their numbers will get us, but these guys blow. These guys suck. They look at how they employ. Like, they don't effectively employ the weapons they even have. Like, it's only the numbers that'll get us. They're idiots. They attack in just a frenzied, thoughtless man. So yeah, I think our guys, I'm calling our guys in Syria they're plenty capable. I like them. Like, I think they fight very well. I've always been impressed. I've always said Jabhat al-Nusra was the best fighting like organization in Syria. Like, they fought very well, and you could see in video footage some of the craziest. It's sad that how much is taken down, but there is really wild video footage in Syria of Jabhat al-Nusra, because they would always attack, in so courageously, and you would see it like really like just under fire, under like withering fire, and they'd be there's footage where they jumped on a Syrian tank and they pulled the tank crew out, and then they're like trying to drive the tank, and they're not doing. It's really incredible footage. It's a shame a lot of the stuff gets scrubbed. Same with the Iraq stuff, but I don't know. But yeah, I think I don't think we're really helping these guys out. Just give them a little more credit. It's credit that they deserve. They fought the battle. They did the thing. Then say America backed you or Israel back. Don't give them the credit. They can't. You're only giving them credit. It doesn't explain it away. It doesn't explain away Assadist cowardice. It doesn't explain away that you would lose that city. You try as you might. You say, well, these guys. It doesn't explain it away. It's not acceptable. If you're an Assadist, you should be. This is unacceptable that our guys ran away from the city. Wouldn't you be pissed? I'd be pissed if, like, even as an American taxpayer, if say our guys in Ukraine, if they just cut and ran from the battlefield. I think, wouldn't you say maybe we're kind of blowing our money on this if they're not going to really fight, or is this really a good side we want to back? We love our guys because they fight. We love our guys with courage. We'll criticize if there's a unit that's cowardly. We're going to criticize that unit. We're not going to sweep it under the rug and blame someone else. We're going to say that's not acceptable. We're going to say it's not acceptable that you fled the battlefield so cowardly. So, but these people have no self-respect, and they're all cowards, and they I don't know. There's a lot to go over with all the Syrian stuff, and I know I'm kind of all over the place with this, but hopefully hopefully this kind of makes sense. There's a lot more we could tackle, a lot more my views on this thing. There's a lot more, there's a lot of like stuff getting repeated that I see with like, oh, it turns out the Assad's main power was with Hezbollah or something. I don't believe that. I think he did have Hezbollah, but Hezbollah didn't fight everywhere in Syria. Hezbollah only fought in certain battles. Hezbollah fought, but they didn't fight. They weren't like Assad didn't have like Hezbollah on his front line everywhere. Like that's not really the case. That's exaggeration. Okay, so I'd like to keep getting into the nitty gritty of this stuff, but just going forward, I think hopefully, I guess this will clear out some of the bogus illusions and delusions that people have, because there's so much propaganda about this stuff, and it's so rare to really see where people actually know what they're talking about on the subject. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm the biggest military expert or something, but these people are full of beans. I'll say that. I think you should know that. Like, you should know that you're being lied to. Like, if you subscribe to that at one point, and you, like I said, at first I subscribed to some of this. At first I thought the Assad position was reasonable in like 2012, and when I started to follow it, I thought, okay, sure, but then quickly, like, I became more sympathetic with the rebels, which I have been ever since. So even now, I'd like to see a rebel victory. Hopefully, the Free Syrian Army driving this, like, because we don't really want to see like a theocratic outcome emerge. I'd like to see, I don't know, I like something peaceable with HTS in this framework. But who knows? If they put in all the heavy lifting, then it's their right to govern however they choose to. I'm not saying I want to see that, because I'm not really into that sort of thing. Our concern is the war. Our concern is the enemy. I'm not that concerned if Syria is democratic or something, and then like, I don't like if Syrians come up with something else, if they just want to kill Assad and make something else where there's like no Russia involved or something, I'm cool with that. Like, I won't be the one stepping in to say you can't do that or something. I'm just here for the war. Okay? Whoever wins the war has the right to rule. It's same thing in Ukraine. If the war is primarily driven by libtards, okay. If it's primarily driven by Azov and far right, okay. This is who has, you have the right to, you fight for it. That's what I believe. I think that that's the natural way of things. This is how we decide things on the battlefield, and that's the most correct way. And war is good, and the baseline isn't even peace or anything. Like, that's not, peace is a real luxury that people no longer deserve. Like, we don't even deserve to live in peace. Like, it's so stupid to act like that, like, where things get so bad and then it's like you're going to cling to like peace, but people won't sort things out in a peace situation. It'll get worse and more, people don't just sit down and figure these things out and dial them in correctly. You need a war. You need something to drive them. You need mortal combat to make them better, to make them get serious. And right now, people are not serious. They have not seriously... They're commenting, but they're not seriously, you know, trying to figure things out. Which is all I think that someone should, just try to learn something. If you're probably not going to contribute to the Syrian situation, but what you could do is learn something, and that could be useful for if you find yourself in a conflict in the future. You could refer to that, because it's nice to refer to lessons that you didn't have to learn the hard way, that you learned from observation and think, isn't that kind of intelligent way to do this? So, but you can't do that if you only believe lies and you only believe a cartoon fabricated reality where Assad is the biggest badass ever and the U.S. tried as hard as they could to take him down, and an international coalition tried to, but he fought off all comers. This never happened. This didn't happen. And if it did happen, you'd still have Aleppo. They wouldn't have this calamity, because this is a calamity for them. This is why we celebrate, because it's a huge calamity for our enemies. Because how funny is it that Assad goes to Moscow and talks, like, how awkward of a conversation. He has to explain that he's lost the city. Russia has to fight to get it back from him. The Russians probably want to pull, like, they probably wish they could bail like Biden did in Afghanistan, but they can't. They have to stick around and eat lead and shrapnel, and just like they deserve. But it's very funny, and it's a huge calamity. So thank you, the Syrians. This is exactly what we've wanted to see for so long, because we'd like to see this other front pop off. So things are working out so well, but we could learn a lot from the situation. It's kind of cool. It should be kind of cool. I think going forward, we're gonna find this stuff is good fun. I have good fun with it. Stuff like Ukraine and stuff. It's not as fun. It's because it's so sad. Because there's I don't know, because it's like Russia, like, just massacring all these, like, civilians and things. I mean, of course, this happens in Syria too. It's just, humor me. But I don't know. Going forward, it should be good. But yeah, my advice is to just try to learn something. Try to get serious as a person, as a warrior, as someone, and also how to, because figure this. I don't really subscribe to, like, shit hits the fan scenarios or something. But let's say you do. Let's say you're like Tim Pool and you believe in, like, American Civil War imminent or something. That situation will you'll probably see stuff, like, pretty similar. Like, all the real disaster that happened to the Syrian revolution is all the infighting. Is all the rebel infighting. Because when victory could have been had, there wasn't really, like, it's kind of why ISIS looked so smart, because they had a unified leadership, a real drive. Like, there's like this, they crafted like a juggernaut of a force. So they're saying everyone should just get under us and then we'll do it. Of course, this turned into a lot of infighting. There's been so much infighting. There's infighting on the other side too in Syria, mind you. But which we like to see, and it's funny, but it happens more on our side, where it's just kind of, I say our side, like, our guys. To me, it's just the rebels are like our guys, but there's just been so much infight. That was the real disaster. That's what really saved Assad, even more than Russia, because Russia only came in later, and then by that time it was already so screwed up. So much momentum had been lost, and so much, it was, the whole thing was kind of a disaster. That could happen again, maybe not. We'll see. So far, things are looking better than ever, and it's like, I don't know, but anyway, what I meant to say is, like, if there was like if you're like Tim Pool and American Civil War is real, we'll get like you're gonna see that kind of same infighting. I guarantee it. And you might see also. I mean, like I don't even really believe in this scenario, but like let's say like there was like I could see like the U.S. doing like or like let's say the federal government or something doing like similar to Assad, where they just kind of give up on the idea of like they just however much territory that they don't try to hold, just leave it, just let rebels in it, and just terror bomb it every now and then just kind of like terror bomb the population centers and try to bottle it in, but shore up your own area and just bomb the rebel areas, and then let them fight amongst each other, and then after a while like come back. You know. I could see it. I could see a federal government strategy kind of looking like that, where Assad just kind of shores up Damascus, Latakia, whatever, his Alawite base area, and he's shoring that up, and then the rebels are fighting each other in there. Even though they have most of the country, you have kind of a secure zone. Everyone's fighting each other, and then Russia comes, and then you could just bomb everything out and then take even though he really didn't take everything back over, he never really did, but he got himself to a point where I guess people thought for a while he won the war, but now the chickens have come home to roost. But a lot of these things, couldn't they be kind of lessons you could see, like kind of how the politics goes between the different factions and groups? Like I thought all that was very interesting to kind of just follow and look into and stuff, because if you actually look into it, it'd be kind of interesting. If you're a fool and all you care about is just no matter what happens, you just be like, moderate rebels or like Zionists or you just spout out some dumb line that like explains everything or something, or like is like something. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about with this stuff. So I know this is kind of all over the place, but there's just a lot to talk about. Maybe going forward, we'll get the focus a little more dialed in. But there's just a lot of ground to cover, and there's a lot in the past and the present, and however this is going to look going forward. It's looking pretty good though. We're off to a good start. The rebels aren't going to give ground as easy as the Assadists. They just run off. Our guys are they're gonna dig in deep, and you're gonna need to burn these guys out, and you're gonna So it's very funny to see how maddened the other guys are, and it's all because of their dumb foolishness, and they pretended they won a war. They never did. They never finished business. They just lied to themselves about everything. They had 10 years to go to Idlib and clean the place out, and they never did it. And that's kind of wild. If you're going to say Al-Qaeda runs the province of your country, you should be probably trying to deal with that. But they never did, and now it's dealing with them. So go figure. Who'd have thought, don't. It's great though, because it's like you tell people this and they're not gonna take you seriously, because why should they just believe you? But then it all happens, and then so that's great. Anyway, more on I guess I'll just kind of wrap it up. But yeah, thanks for listening. I know this is kind of all over the place. I know it's like a complicated subject. I have another video on it. If you go back and watch that one, it's like Obama, Assad, something. Some of this I might have covered twice. If you already watched that one, maybe I already know all this or something, but just in light of the present situation, I don't really remember everything I said in that video, but I'm sure it's pretty much the same stuff, because this is just what I think of it, and this is just reflective of facts. and not the conspiracies that tidy everything up, but the actual facts. So we have that on our side, and so we can just watch these people, all these liars, have to fight their double. They have to fight kind of on two fronts, the battlefield and their war with the truth, which is always ongoing. But yeah, I know there's a lot more to talk about. I'm just going to wrap it up here because there'll be time to to talk more, and hopefully we can kind of tighten the focus up. Let me know if this is too kind of convoluted. If I was kind of too all over the place to kind of, I think probably a lot of people are kind of used to me kind of being all over the place with some of them. So if you're a regular listener, you probably figured it all out. You probably got all the information you needed. Anyway, but yeah. Thanks for listening. All right.